Happy Sunday, happy weekend, happy, for me, only day off this week. I've had a very busy week with my teaching. Let me take off that banner. Soundengraver.com if you want to listen to a nice, upbeat, fully mixed and mastered and recorded by me album, or actually EP, 4-track EP, which, looking back, it's been 2 months since I've actually listened to that, those tracks. I was listening to it last night and I was like, man, I'm so happy about that mastering. And I hope my next couple of single tracks will have the same level of mastering, but we shall see. But it feels good to be proud of something I did because it took a long time. So let's, let me take that banner off first. Yep, Winsome EP, or my 4-track EP called Winsome. And actually that track you heard is the title, Winsome, as well. Let's see how you guys are doing. I'm just setting up the area here. Looks like we got quite a few members, people in the chat. Good. And there I go. Ooh. So we'll be talking about the divine in literature, or the divine in stories. It should be it's going to be a very casual conversation. First of all, it's very topical, but it's also very dense. And I have so much information just stuffed in my brain. And I decided just to kind of roll with it because I know I won't cover everything I want with the topic that is the divine in stories. And yeah, this can be applied to not just literature like novels and stuff, but also, comic books, as I'm going to be discussing with Wonder Woman, video games, as Brian is mentioning. Although I have not played any religious themed video games. I know they're out there, especially more modern ones, but I haven't done it. I mean, I guess you can. I haven't played Castlevania, but I guess you can count Castlevania in as being religious as well, or spiritual, or maybe not religious per se, but thematically religious, but talking about divine. So when you talk about the divine, you're talking about supernatural forces that are beyond your scope and beyond your dimension. And it can be literally God, or an analog to God, and an analog to spiritual forces like angels and demons, but it can also be different things too. Because I'm going to be talking about C.S. Lewis, but I'm also going to be talking about Wonder Woman. Very different stories, but they, at least with this Wonder Woman story, and probably just her origin in general, it's a lot of incorporating the divine, and they're two very different approaches. Now, speaking personally, as a Christian, as someone who is religious and devoted to her religion on a daily basis, I will say I'm not a fan of Christian religion. Or Christian literature. Let's get that right. Christian fiction. That's the best word for that. Yeah, I'm all for the Christian religion. I'm all for some Christian literature, if I can say it. But I would say, let me see real quick. Okay, it looks like everything's cool with the audio. I have books here. I will say, C.S. Lewis is, if you do want Christian fiction, I really highly recommend C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to be talking about, specifically That Hideous Strength, which is the third installment of his space trilogy. The first one is Out of the Silent Planet, which is really nice. Paralandra, which is really nice too, but very, very dense. Very dense in theology and supposition and all sorts of things. And then That Hideous Strength, which I'll talk about primarily as this topic goes on today. And then also, while we're at it, talking about the story I finished this week that Prof recommended. And this is actually my first Wonder Woman comic. I haven't read any of her stories. Very much liked it. I was engrossed the whole time. It took me, give or take, an hour of reading, probably a couple nights, maybe 3 nights of reading over the course of 2 to 3 hours. But yeah, I really, really do like this. I'm very happy that this was my first Wonder Woman story. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But let me go ahead and welcome the chat since you guys are in. It's kind of dark. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get it a little light. I don't know why. I should set up a little bit nicer light, but I don't. All right, so we've got Professor Geek who said something so nice. He said, "An angel talking about the divine." Yeah, with sunglasses, because he's like that. He's cool and he's very handsome and very other things that I will not mention. It's very impolitic to mention on stream. Brian Gilmartin, well, welcome. I hope I can talk today. Have I talked at all today? Probably a little bit with Prof, and that's it. Private Eye, welcome to see you. Ghost Planet is in after all. Prayers for his mother, who's having a doctor's appointment tomorrow. And it only reminds me, and prayers for her only reminds me that I gotta be responsible this year and go see the doctor myself. I always think that, oh, no, I'm pure. I have everything going for me, but I don't know what's going on with me. And I'm getting older too. 2 weeks from today, I will be turning 38. So it's not that big of a birthday. It's not like changing into a different decade, but I do think about getting older as time goes on. Not in a morbid way, just in a serious way. Let's see. Big Al. Oh, Crystal Ashes is in. Big Al is also in. Welcome, Crystal Ashes. Big Al says, "Have a great show, Sound Engraver. Hope everyone has a happy and safe week ahead." I know I'll have a good week ahead. I've just been so dang busy with teaching, and it's come to the point where it's slightly overwhelming. It's fine. It's a good problem to have. I have many students. I think a little too many. And I capped it off with my manager this last week. I said, I can take one more student, and I'm only taking this student because it's a returning student and the person's been great. But I am not taking any more students. And I think some of the associates don't know that. They're like, "Oh no, she'll be available if this time slot is available." I was like, "No, I've got like 43 students now," which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. And I feel like let me know if the audio is good. All right. Scorpio is in. Good to see you. Thank you, Crystal Ashes, channel member, saying really enjoy Winsome, highly recommend it. Thank you. I'm very proud of those 4 tracks. I must say, I'm very happy that I did what I did, and I'll be working on, or I am rather, I'm working on 2 back and forth between 2 single tracks. Really for a 5-track album in the future that's more desert themed. It's just this idea of desert, and it doesn't have to be desert specific, but it kind of is. And they're a little bit longer. These tracks on Winsome, they're shorter. I think most of them are 5 minutes and under, which is kind of long anyway. But I am working on longer form electronic music with between 2 and 5 tracks for this album I hope to work on. And I'm also trying to do the last 4 movements that I started on of More Than Conquerors as an EP, but then also as a full length album. So we'll see how much music I get done this year. Ever since I started teaching so much, I have to plan accordingly. It's been a little difficult. I do it every day, but I do very little every day, and I feel kind of behind. Brian Gilmartin says, "I know the feeling about having only Sunday off. Happens to me anytime I work a Saturday shift." Yeah, I'm working a couple Saturdays just to keep up with makeup lessons. I have like 15 hours worth of makeup lessons I have to do, and I'm like, well, I can't do Thursday, and I don't want to do Thursday. So I do a few hours now on Saturdays, but it's not permanent. I keep telling people, no, it's not that I'm teaching Saturdays. I'm just making myself available a couple Saturdays. Anyway, you don't need to. That's boring stuff. You don't want to listen to my gripes working. All right. Looking clear and stunning as always. Thank you, my wonderful husband. Stunning and brave. Also in, channel member as well. Thank you for sticking with being a channel member. Amy L, I see you're in. That's good to see you too. And I think that's Oh, Final Fantasy. I thought I saw one more person. Yeah. Cool. All right. Good. Oh, and Ace Moa, good to see you also in the chat just to say hi. Got a quota to make in the pit. I don't know what that means, but it sounds ominous. All right. So yeah, so I this topic is really because I finished two stories. I finished uh really the culmination of the space trilogy. Is that in order? Nah, it's kind of backwards. Let's see. There. There. That's how we do it. I love the concept art with C.S. Lewis, and then also with Wonder Woman. So we'll talk about. I think we'll talk about C.S. Lewis first. I think that's appropriate. I mean, if anyone is religious or spiritual or brings in the divine in literature and stories, it's definitely C.S. Lewis. He's like the most famous example, especially since the 20th century and also 21st century. I mean, his stuff is constantly read. It's still being read to this day, which is great. So it's worth discussing. I would love to do. I don't have time right in the near future, but I really would love to do a, a review of the space trilogy. So not today. We won't do it today. There would be spoilers because there's just so much to discuss, and then we'll talk about Wonder Woman. So these are two very, very different pieces of work. Obviously, the medium is different. We have a set of novels from C.S. Lewis, and we have a graphic novel or comic from George Perez, and they're different in their medium. They're also different, obviously, with their tone and story. C.S. Lewis, in particular, wrote the very interesting history with his space trilogy. I think there were two interesting things about it. First is what I had read was that he was very much inspired by H.G. Wells, who I think even to this day is one of the finest science fiction writers that I have read. He really is up there, at least among the top 10 of sci-fi writers of all time. And he's one of the first. I mean, he really started writing his stuff in the late 1800s, getting into the turn of the century. And C.S. Lewis, with his space trilogy, it was written and published a generation, maybe even almost two generations after Time Machine and War of the Worlds. But he was definitely inspired. Now he loved H.G. Wells' work, and the narrative is kind of similar as far as the protagonist going through his different journeys on Mars and Venus. But the difference is with H.G. Wells, the Martians who are bad came to us to dominate us as human beings, and it took place in England. Whereas with C.S. Lewis, England is under spiritual attack, and there's this journeying out to Mars that is inhabited, but it's also protected from the human fallen nature. With out of the silent planet, Melicandra, who that is also Ares, that is also Mars. Even though Ares is the god of war, this is actually a very harmonious set of alien races that are very different from one another, but based on the protection of this archangel Melicandra, they live at peace. They share the same language, even though they're three different races. Their culture is completely different. One very tall, gigantic humanoid culture is the intellect, the scholars. This kind of otter humanoid race of aliens is they're more the poets and the fishermen and the agricultural culture. And then finally, it's hard to describe, but there's kind of a dwarvish, not really insect, kind of like almost like a rodent dwarvish alien. I think they're more. Am I thinking rodent? Yeah, I think that's right. And they're the builders. That's their culture, and it all pertains, or it all adheres to Mars. It adheres to the solar system that is old solar, or that is based on like a religion of not worshiping but serving angelic beings and archangels that serve ultimately the god analog of that story. So Now, as far as C.S. Lewis, I'll get to really Wonder Woman. Actually, let me get to that real quick. Wonder Woman is different because it's not based on any Christian analog. It's not based on any archangels or one sole god. Wonder Woman is obviously based on the Greek mythology, so there is the divine in that respect, where it's a numerous gods and goddesses and messengers of gods and the divine that way. So we'll get into both of those in a second. But yeah, let's talk about C.S. Lewis and then I'll get into the chat. So I would recommend, okay, I will say, as far as a reader, Prof said it perfectly earlier today. These books are they are must reads. They can be a little slow, a little dense, and I got dim. There I got bright again. They're a little slow, not in a bad way. They're a little dense, and you have to kind of chew thoughtfully as a reader, especially with the middle book, Paralandra. Now, I will say, you can actually read Out of the Silent Planet first, Paralandra second, and it works as a duology. And you can also read Hideous Strength by itself, but I would recommend the first two books. You don't have to read the first two books to get the sense of what's going on in the story, but it just enriches the reading experience because you know what's happened in the past with a particular protagonist. He plays an active role. So this is Dr. Elwyn Ransom, who I think is a sit-in for Tolkien, C.S. Lewis's friend, because he's a philologist, and he has very active roles in both of these, especially Out of the Silent Planet, but actually not. It's pretty active in Paralandra. And so, so I would recommend reading the Space Trilogy or listening to it on Audible simply for the world building. Because, okay, people do call it a sci-fi. It's not so much hard, or it's actually not hard science at all. It's more of a religious, spiritual space fantasy. It's very fantastical, very beautiful, like the world building for Mars and Venus, and Mars in particular. I was kind of stunned by. I was like, oh man, this is so cool. I love that he has this idea that this is Mars. Mars that's untouched by fallen human beings, but plentiful in intelligence and alien races and all that. And it's red, so it's like this, the beauty in the crimson color. Red, purple, dark, but beautiful at the same time. You've got these wonderful the Hross and the Sjorn, for the characters, for the alien characters. So Melicandra is Mars. Paralandra, so Mars being the masculine, so Mars is very much the force, the Aryasa, the archangel of Mars. He or it is of the masculine embodiment of everything, whereas Venus is the feminine, and Paralandra is beautiful as a world. So I mean, if you are a writer or someone who aspires to write fantastical things, read the Space Trilogy, even though it's theologically dense, and even though the theology is kind of strange in some ways. It's not supposed to be taken as literal theology. I would just read it just for the world building sake, because it's very, very interesting. So you've got Mars, Melicandra, archangel, masculine archangel of Melicandra, the Aryasa, and then you've got Paralandra, Venus, the feminine, the archangel or archangelic power that is the feminine, that is Venus, the newness of life, the birth of life, fertility, and all of that stuff. And yeah, I remember talking to an astronomy professor way back, like 20 years ago in college, and I remember telling him about Paralandra because Venus obviously is very gaseous. It's or gaseous, is that how you say that word? A lot of dense atmosphere, a lot of clouds, a lot of storms, rock bottom, whereas Venus and C.S. Lewis is very fertile, gorgeous, like it's golden, and like the islands move, like the ground is pretty much like, it's almost like a giant waterbed, because the islands float and move and undulate and all that stuff. It's great, and it's golden. It's very, very fruitful. and fertile and golden. And even there's even a small dragon animal that warms up to Ransom when he first arrives on Venus. And in dragon, we do mostly think mythologically we think of a dragon as a beast to slay because it's evil, whereas in Paralandra, it's a good beast. It's like a cat. It curls up around your legs and lets you pet its head and stuff. So very very interesting. It's like the world building is so good. Let me grab a swig of water real quick. So so you have these adventures, Elwyn Ransom, the protagonist, and I will say, out of the Silent Planet is Earth. It's Thalkandra, and it's completely it's like radio silence in a way. We're completely cut off from things like deep heaven, which is further interplanetary and intergalactic space, which is analog for heaven or firmament, God's area or a place of purity and all that. So deep heaven is really the space in this world. It's not just a vacuum. It is pretty much heaven in the physical dimension that is space. So what was I saying? Oh, but so we have Malcandra, Paralandra, the archangels of Mars and Venus. Now the archangel of Earth, or Thalkandra, which means silent planet or gray planet, I can't remember. Basically, he became bent. Basically the analog of Lucifer. He became bent, and he can't dominate other worlds. He's been ostracized by all the other angelic beings and the god character Meleldiel himself. But he still roams and prays about Earth, and because of that, in this world, the planet is silent. It can't make it. Venus can communicate with Mars, for instance, or Jupiter or Saturn or whatever, but and thus the worlds under their dominion are protected. Venus is pretty much the Eden of the planet, like before the fall. And Mars it's not before the fall, it's just protected from the influence the fall has had, because the alien races live in harmony with one another. Whereas Thalkandra, or Earth, is it cannot have, it's been excommunicated. It can't have any communication with the other planets. Therefore, the human beings, the human residents on Earth, they don't know anything about traveling to Mars or Venus. They don't know anything about the Professor Weston, who is the villain of both Out of the Silent Planet and Paralandra. No one knows besides Ransom and Ransom's closest confidants, which actually one of the confidants is C.S. Lewis himself. He's also a professor and friend of Ransom in the book. It's great. I love that. Like, people might think that's really hokey and cheesy. I think it's kind of cool. If you want to put yourself as a character, you're not the main character, but you're a really good friend, a close friend of the main character, because Ransom talks to this professor character. Oh, Lewis, I was like, oh, that's funny. And which it actually kind of makes sense, because Ransom's supposed to be Tolkien, really, and they were friends. So, and Tolkien was religious. He was a Catholic, so Ransom is also a Christian in the book. So anyway, where was I going with that? So Earth is cut off from all these heavenly influences, and then we get into Earth in the third book, That Hideous Strength. I won't go into spoiler territory. I'd love to do a full account, a full review of, really a summary with a review of all these books. But That Hideous Strength, we are on Earth now. As I just said, Earth and people in Earth, and this is 1940s England, either 1930s or 1940s England at the point of this book, the setting, and we're getting into I was almost about to say we're getting into World War III. No, that's the Wonder Woman story. But anyway, so we're on Earth. No spiritual forces as we can see. It's not this fantastical, beautiful red Mars. It's not this beautiful golden Venus. We're in England, 1930s or 1940s or whatever, and it's very mundane. You're talking about college policies and the selling of land, the mundane. You're going back and forth between a married couple who they are the main protagonists of that hideous strength. They're very irreligious. The wife is this kind of disgruntled. She's kind of bitter about being married, even though she did marry. She's like 23. She's like, well, I don't like this like motherly nature that is like people are expecting of me. Or this wife nature. You know, she's kind of pushing, understandably so, in the 1940s or something, this kind of feminist ideology that she has. That she resents other women for being dutiful to their husbands, or at least having a thing of societal class of women of previous generations. She wants to be her own thing. She wants to have her own agency. But she married a man who also is a very shallow, very superficial individual who has this obsession of being in an inner circle to his detriment until he comes over. He overcomes all of that in his arc, and again, I won't spoil the story, but we're in the mundane now. We're no longer in the spiritual of deep heaven or of other planetary uh uh uh, what am I trying to say, habitat, other habitat, planetary dominion. That's what I was trying to say. So it does, I would say, you could see how thick this book is, that hideous strength, and you can see how thick these two books are. It's kind of the same length here. So these are faster reads, even though Paralandra is so dense. But anyway, so we're following this really young couple, and they diverge. They go about their different ways. The man Mark is been given this opportunity, the opportunity to work in this very we can already see the signs. We can already as readers see like the red flags with this institution called NICE, which spells nice, obviously. What was it called? The New Institute of Cooperation Experimentation. I can't remember. I cannot remember what NICE stands for, but basically, cooperated experimentation. Basically, it's cold. It's purely science, purely scientific um, uh, objectives, which again, like there's nothing wrong with science in and of itself, but this institution and thus the culture of England at this point is all about doing away with religion and morality and embracing things like experimenting on criminals and, you know, having them what's it called, remedial treatment, but it's not really remedial treatment. It's more torture. It's more possibly guillotine them and preserving their life, trying to restore life as men and not as God, because these scientific men and women want to play God. And also there's this really brutal police force that's outside the English police force, or not outside, because they soon dominate this little small town called Edgestowe. And it is just about cold, calculating, scientific, the disdain of the organic, the disdain of anything that requires hygiene to overcome. So things like skin, things like hair, things like nails, things like human matter that make the body, so to speak. It's disgusting. Like there's this one scientist character who has complete disdain of the human body, complete disdain of dirt and trees. He's fine with metallic trees populating the world, as long as it's completely clean, completely sterile. I mean, this really could have been an interesting film adaptation, like in the 1970s. I don't know if I would want to see a film adaptation of these books now, but either a 2D animation series or something that looks straight out of 1970s, because it really would have worked. So at the NICE, they, instead of like arrest criminals and punish criminals through judicial law, that is the Western traditional judicial law. They take them in and experiment on them. Now, that actually really, I'll just go on a little rant here. That was a little bit of a disappointment with me. I'm going to try not to. I won't spoil major events because I just I won't do that on the stream. But one thing I really wanted, you can see the horror of the NICE, but you understand what they do to criminals, but you don't actually see it. I wish there was at least one scene. There's kind of one scene through Jane, the woman of the marriage. She's a seer. She can see visions. She sort of in her nightmares sees what's going on, at least with one particular scientist that was beheaded, that was sent for execution. And that's basically it. I kind of wish there was a little bit more. Like, okay, what do they do exactly? You kind of know men and bad men are being, or like criminals are being experimented on, but there's a lot more to that, and you don't really see that. You sort of just assume that happens, and I don't like horror and I don't like gory stuff, but I needed to see something more than just understanding that this institution is sinister. But anyway, the NICE is basically this apparatus of what the scientists call macrobes. So we know about microbes, and macrobes is the name attributed to the angelic forces. And I think only 2 people of the NICE know of the actual demonic influence of their institution. Some book reviewers say, oh no, the whole, like, they give you the impression that all the staff of NICE know the demonic influences at work, like the angelic influences at work, like the demons and stuff. But I think it's just two of the main, like there's one main professor, one main scientist, maybe a demented reverend, but definitely the direct, deputy director. He knows, but I think it's not more than 3. I think the others were just pawns in the whole wanting to control England, wanting to dominate England. So the NICE is this institution that what they call macrobes, but they're really angelic creatures. And it's funny that these scientists call them macrobes, because that's a scientific name for an angelic demonic force. So by even naming the influence, sorry, I think my lip was stuck to my tooth. By even naming a demonic influence a scientific name, they're trying to still objectify just science. It's like, it's not really spiritual. We're still in control. We still have everything, working for us. But there's still some acknowledgement. Okay, some of you guys, like 2 of you guys, know that you are pawns in this scheme, and you're not even afraid of being, bluntly put, you're not afraid of being put to hell, like damned to hell. And and C.S. Lewis gets pretty disturbing in his text. What happens to these people at the very end? It's like, oh dang, wow. Now, on the other side, so Mark, the husband, the young husband, he doesn't know at first. He's just given a job, a nice, well-paying job at this institution. And Jane, however, she is afflicted with these nightmares. She's a seer, and both sides, the bad side and the good side, want to have her, obviously for the good side, to protect her and help her, aid them with what the NICE tries to do, and then vice versa. They could use her vision power to do whatever. And she almost gets caught, and she almost gets taken. And I think it's revealed later that Mark was set up to work for them because they know of his wife's abilities. I didn't get that. Again, it's a really dense book. Maybe on a second reading I would pick that up. But I think they had knowledge of her abilities. But anyway, she's Jane. She this young wife. She's afflicted by these nightmares. She just wants to have a normal life. She just wants to finish her PhD, and but she can't. She's really disturbed by these dreams she has, and these dreams are visions of events that actually take place in the now. And she has mutual friend that is a professor and his wife. They're an older couple. Well, they're actually on the right side. They're on the right side of the team. And Elwin Ransom actually doesn't even go by Ransom at this point anymore. He's almost ageless. Like he's old by his mannerisms and his speaking, and he has pretty much supreme authority over the house, even though he's really the messenger of the gods or the archangels. Um, and he is, even though there's a Jesus archetype in the history of the setting, he's kind of the aspirational Christ-like figure. So no one really can, they know if they, those who know him know how old he is. He's like in his 50s or 60s at this point, but he looks like he's 20 with like this like the golden hair and golden beard, so he's almost godlike himself. So he's in charge of this house, and the house has basically Christian people waiting for um, the Armageddon or Armageddon. I can't say that name. They're basically waiting for the hand of judgment on what's going to happen to England, and if they play their cards right, they will be on the winning side. Now, so I kind of want to get into this point of both the C.S. Lewis and then also the Wonder Woman stories with Out of the Silent Planet. So here and Perelandra. Ransom is a very active protagonist. And he learns from his ways. He learns from what it's like to be human and understand an alien race that lives in harmony with each other. He understands like the almost fallen Eve who is tempted by Weston in Perelandra. Weston is not Weston anymore. It's really disturbing. Weston is possessed by, it's either the Archangel of Earth who found a way, if he possessed Weston to go to Venus, he can break the barrier, because he can't. Earth is basically quarantined. Like no one can, no spiritual force that is demonic or bent can leave Earth outside the moon's orbit. Like it's this is really cool. I love this world building. The dark side of the moon is actually the good side of the moon in this space trilogy, where there's life and plentiful. The bright side of the moon that faces us is actually the sterile and the inorganic and the machine and the demonic forces just stripping life off the moon. Now, obviously, for us in real science, we don't have life on the moon, but there are. With science fiction, it's very common to have inhabitable moons. And I didn't know that when I first saw Star Wars. I'm like, why is Endor inhabitable? That's silly. But it's as old as science fiction, is where they're okay. If planets can be inhabitable, then the satellites of those planets can also be inhabitable, just depending on how it works. So the dark side of the moon that doesn't face Earth, that doesn't face us, the fallen human beings, that's the good side of the Earth, and the sterile white side of the moon is like, oh, that's where the demonic forces, they can't, it's either Earth or that side of the moon, but they can't go beyond in space. But they can if they possess Weston, who is a scientist and a physicist himself, who has traveled to space. At the point of Perelandra, he travels, I think, 2 or 3 times. Well, 3 times with Perelandra, but I think he's been on the moon before. I can't remember exactly, but he's traveled to space a few times now, trying to have man dominate the alien races, thinking they're him thinking they're primitive. So good, but again, I won't do the whole book summary. So all that to say is Ransom is a pretty active protagonist. There's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of learning language, there's a lot of adapting to different alien culture. But when stakes get very high, he's very proactive. He's more of a diplomat in his being proactive on Mars. And at first I thought he was more of a theological priestly, kind of an emissary for Venus before the first Adam and Eve succumb to temptation. That's not true, though. There's a point in Perelandra where he's very active. Like, again, it's perfect that these two men fight, because the way he fights the demented or demonic, the demon possessed Weston, is like brutal, like breaking bones, like clawing skin, like brutal, brutal fighting. So he plays a very active role. Weston, yes, as the villain, but Ransom, it plays an active role as the protagonist, the good guy. He is not really an active role in that hideous strength. He subdues the powerful Merlin, and then he invites Merlin to have the gods or the archangels possess Merlin with their powers. Now, I, from a Christian theological, this is where we get into the spiritual. I'm not saying this is wrong, this is right. It's just really what you prefer as a writer and as a reader. But I'm just trying to get light. I just there. It's just like so dim. But maybe that's just me. Anyway, we're going back to the divine. So in that hideous strength, there's a little agency with the spiritual forces at work, where the good guys, if they wait, if they're patient, if they're stewards of the earth, if they're stewards of gardening and taking care of animals and taking care of each other, like Christians should. We should be, I as a Christian need to be mindful always for the well-being of other people. And that includes, life and things like animals and stuff, if that's the case, no abusing or experimenting on and stuff. Well, then that's personal agency. That's like that's all you do as Christians. You wait and you work and you do good works. On the other side, with the bad guys, with that hideous strength, that the bad guys are conducting horrible police brutality. They're causing riots. They're causing a whole ton of propaganda, and they're experimenting on both men and animals. So that's their agency, and I will say, at least with this book, that's all that happens with the individual characters with their agency. They either are doing good works and waiting, or bad works and trying to bring about this power, this dominant force over England. And then there's, without going into the spoilers or details, the evil that the people of the NICE do brings about or brings upon them their own doom. And from there, it's the heavenly forces that take charge and duke it out with the demonic forces. I will say, while that is such a cool idea, I really wanted to see that like in the front seats, front and center, with Lewis. Now, he actually doesn't do that. He does write out, in very intense scenes, he basically spells out the doom of the wicked people and the paradise of the good people. And I love that. But there was, as far as agency, it was like once the bad guys brought the heavenly forces down upon them, that was it. They had no more agency. So it wasn't, this is very different from Lord of the Rings, where, yeah, there's obviously a god. There are god and goddesses or angelic forces in the Middle Earth mythology. But people like Aragorn, people like Faramir, like people like Frodo, Gandalf, they have all these qualities of being a warrior, or just getting the ring to Mordor. It's by their own agencies that they bring about good in the world or bad in the world. So while there is a god character and angelic forces with Tolkien's world, with C.S. Lewis in particular, besides the first two books where Ransom is pretty proactive, it is really the good characters watching and waiting, and then having paradise be brought to them, and then the bad guys kind of feasting and reveling, and then having doom just swallow them up. And I appreciate that as like someone who knows a little Christian theology and also events in the Old Testament. As a reader, though, I would have wanted the final battle to be the actual human forces, the good human beings and the bad human beings. But no, the agency kind of just stopped right at the oh, you're bad until you bring hell upon yourself. You're good until you bring paradise on yourself. So Christian wise, yeah, I mean, there that's I can see that. But storytelling wise, I'm like, oh, you mean the battle's taken care of and you don't have to do anything? So there was that. So agency, I think you want to know what you can do with agency with the spiritual forces. Like um how much do you want your characters to be proactive? Do you want the good force of the gods or the good force of the one god to aid you? Do you want the power of prayer and the dynamics between praying to a god or to heavenly forces, and then there's like this dynamic? Is your character good or bad solely working on their own agency and maybe a little dynamic with some spiritual forces? So that's all to consider if you want the divine in your stories or divine in literature. So like the C.S. Lewis space trilogy is heavily divine. Um, and it's very proactive in the first two books. Sorry. And then the uh, final installment is, yeah, we know who the good guys are, we know who the bad guys are, but they're pretty much staying at their headquarters, like their bases. They don't really move. They don't really, besides rescuing Jane at one point, they don't really do much else besides stay at their bases and then have the heavenly forces come upon them. And it's still very interesting. Still just wonderful, like a wonderful read. I highly recommend these reads. But you need to ask yourself, if you're including a religious mythology, how much interplay is going between your protagonist and like the gods at work? I mean, you could definitely see some interplay with the Eagles, with The Hobbit, but then also especially with Lord of the Rings, and how much they can help the heroes and how much they have to withhold from helping the heroes. Because the Eagles, I think, are actual messengers and carriers of Manwë, who is pretty much the head archangel or head god under Iluvatar, the one god. So there's a balance. So that was my impression with that hideous strength. I loved that all these characters did have their agencies up until the point, but there was unfortunately for me as a reader, I was expecting, I mean, there's even a reoccurring enemy. There's a reoccurring villain from the first book into the third book, and I thought there was going to be some meeting between him and Ransom, because they had been together that first trip over to Mars and going back from Mars back to Earth. But that doesn't happen. People might say, oh, that's a little bit more realistic. I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. I did want a little bit more of a meeting of the good and the bad. It's not a criticism, because I really do like the book, but it's not how I would have written the story if there were angelic forces helping and aiding the good guys and demonic forces aiding the bad guys. All right, let's get back into the chat and then we'll talk about Wonder Woman. 1 second. I'm gonna grab some water. Actually, one more sip. Okay. It's cold outside, but it's kind of warm in here, so I feel a little thirstier. All right, let's see what you guys are saying. We've got on the 14th. Big Al is saying, to Ghost Planet, doing a Friday Films with friends on the 14th at 8 of the first Leprechaun. Yeah, holiday themed. All right, guys, looks like you are talking amongst yourselves. I keep forgetting what IIRC stands for in real life, or what does IIRC stand for, guys? I don't know the vernacular. um, so you say that Sephiroth gets from Final Fantasy VII gets his name from the Jewish Hebrew influences. I mean, it kind of sounds Hebrew. Seph is angelic, like seraphim, right? Is that right? Seraphic, Seph, and then Roth is just probably like a an ending of name. Well, that does Roth sound Hebrew? I don't know. I used to go through a lot of Hebrew words, not to understand them, but just kind of see what they look like. Oh, okay, so Final Fantasy is confirming that Sephiroth, the Sephirotic tree, heavy influences of major characters in Final Fantasy VII. Let's see. Crystal Ash just says, "Heaven forbid they accidentally open up the gates of hell. Uh, oh, to hell on Mars. That would be awkward." Yeah, yeah. We think alien, we think bad, or um, something that wants to dominate us, but they're very peaceful aliens on Mars, which is I wonder why he did that because the god of war is over Mars. In fact, he does use the Roman words, the Roman names. He uses Venus, he uses Ares. So, or Venus is that? No, no, no. Who's is it Aphrodite? I think Prof said it was Aphrodite who is over Venus, which makes sense. So like Venus being um, love and fertility and all that. Now I'm terrible with my Greek mythology. Prof is so much better. That's part of his curriculum. Yeah, Crystal Ashes say what they do to criminals is not very nice. Yeah, it wasn't really shown. It wasn't really shown, but there's so much to the book. I don't have the brain power or the time or the energy to talk about the workings and the goings on in the story, but it is definitely worth a read. People are arguing for realism in a sci-fi story with gods and demons. I mean, like not in particular. There's this one bad character that accompanies. He basically kidnaps. He helps kidnap Ransom in the first book to go to Mars, and he appears again under a different name in the third book. And so I'm like, oh, he even mentions Ransom. He calls him a murderer, and he accuses Ransom of murdering um, the bad guy of the first two books. And I was like, oh, they'll see each other, right? No, they don't. They don't. Wow, you're actually back. It's been a while. Yeah, I came back actually last week. Yeah, I had the power outage 2 weeks ago. Good to see you, Orku. And then uh sick the previous week. Oh, Oth. Okay, Amiel is let me just put this up. Oth in Hebrew would be a feminine plural. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, well, why is Sephiroth having that name then? He's supposed to be a masculine dude. Let's see. You'll have to explain that reference because I don't know it. The alternate, or Chris Ashes, if you can explain this reference. This is an alternate universe where Marvin is benevolent and not out to destroy Earth. It's just like, I feel like I could be totally wrong. Is that like a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference? I don't know the reference. Sorry. All right. So, let's continue. I think that's what I wanted to see. And so we're coming from C.S. Lewis with more of a Christian tone, like a real Christian tone. Even if it's not direct theology, it's like there's a lot of analogous things that C.S. Lewis's works embody, like man before the fall, man after the fall, man in his fallen state. And it's just it is very fantastical. It's very it's more space fantasy than it is sci-fi. I mean, you can call it sci-fi. That's totally fine. And there are some sci-fi elements like the ship that he's kidnapped and how the ship works and very interesting journey to Mars and back from Mars because it was really dangerous. But speaking of Mars, we'll talk about well, not really Mars, but we'll talk about Wonder Woman with the main arch nemesis that is Ares, the god of war, which is god of Mars. So this is coming with C.S. Lewis being the Christian analog. This is the Greek mythology analog, and now where I appreciate this before I even forget with the Wonder Woman story is that it is very much the divine integrated with her history, with the history of her mother, with the history of the Amazons, with the history of her origin of nation, and then also her own history of her birth. With this George Perez run, which Prof talked about, and the art is great, the story is great. One thing that I'll just mention that Prof mentioned on his stream, the Steve Trevor is here. He's an older Navy SEAL pilot. I think he's Navy SEAL. But he's much older and he's not acting as a love interest, which I wish there was a little bit more. There's definitely a good relationship between them, but it's kind of it was definitely not romantic, so that was lacking. But with Wonder Woman, we leave the Christianity sphere and go to the gods and goddesses and the deities. And like you never, I being a Christian and a religious person at that, like I do have a respect for the Greek mythology and how things work because there are things like prayer, petition, penance. There are well, basically, Prof put it beautifully when we were talking a couple nights ago, where it's not all one God that encompasses all virtues and all qualities and all dominion. So of course there's oh, I forgot to ask Prof the name. I can't pronounce the name, but the god of the sea, Sidon, is that how you pronounce his name? You've got Aphrodite, the goddess of love. You've got Artemis, the hunter or huntress. So all these different qualities and specialties. Now, I really, and I'll just get straight into it. Yeah, I know how to spell it. I just don't know how to pronounce it. So here you go. That's who I was talking about. The birth of Wonder Woman is really nice. Let's see if I can find it before no, this is way after. Beautiful book, beautiful art. It's so dark in here. I probably should yeah, it's toward the beginning. I can't really see it because there's so much ink. But you can see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 goddesses plus Hermes. And you can kind of see, oops, right here, this little star, this little light, that these 5 goddesses and Hermes are pretty much bequeathing on this light. And basically the light, they're in Gaia's womb. I think they're either near or very close, or that means the same thing. They're either in or very close to the oblivion, where gods go and then they come out no more. We've got the river Styx and Charon, the ferryman, and the ferryman takes these 5 goddesses and Hermes to this Gaia, which is the goddess of earth. And the womb of Gaia, and there's all these little lights, and basically the history of Wonder Woman is basically the lights are all these women who had been killed by men prematurely. So they didn't die of old age, or they didn't die of decay or disease or pregnancy and birth or whatever. It was men who had killed them. And so the lights, the goddesses at first send all these lights to this sea of life so that they can be reincarnated. They're not resurrected. I wouldn't use that word for that. They're these spirits of women that had been killed prematurely have been reincarnated as Amazons, like with endowed by such strength and knowledge, wisdom, love, all this. Um, and so that's the Amazons, the great race of women. But there was one little light that remained, and that's in here. And Athena, the goddess in blue in this story, she says, well, it's not time to send this out yet. It's not time to send her spirit out. But on this page, it is time, because Ares is becoming uber powerful and he's dominating the earth, and you've got the Soviet Union against America, and you got the America against the Soviet Union, and nuclear warfare and stuff. So the threat is imminent. We gotta, I mean, it's becoming to the head. Maybe several years, because obviously Diana's not born yet. She's not a baby yet, and she's not grown yet. But a number of years before the final assault, that would be World War III. And what I like about this is that the goddesses, with each of their, I mean, I'll even explain, I'll kind of say what these ladies and the Hermes, the male messenger, is saying. They're praying, they're blessing that Gaia would endow this spirit, who's to be Wonder Woman, with all their virtues, with all their traits. And so so the first one, I, Demeter, grant her power and strength like that of earth itself. I, Aphrodite, because that's her voice, give her great beauty and a loving heart. I, Athena, grant her wisdom. I, Artemis, give her the eye of the hunter and unity with the beasts. I, Hestia, I think that's how you pronounce her name, grant her sisterhood with fire, that it may open men's hearts to her. And that's beautiful. So all these goddesses are giving her all these feminine qualities, but also the ability to communicate with men. And then I, Hermes, the male messenger, says, I give her speed and the power of flight. So she has these superhuman powers by all these prayers and blessings of these goddesses. And I personally love that. Like, I don't believe as a Christian, like, oh, goddesses around here to give us such power. But I love that. I love that the origin of Wonder Woman is, well, at least in this run, is like inherently linked to the blessings of the divine, which makes obviously her relation to her mother, that they're immortals. All these Amazons are immortals, so as long as they can maintain, peace on the earth, if there is a lot of warfare, and if Ares has the upper hand and basically is about to obliterate the world, obviously even their island is not safe. They're guarding also this evil. I don't think the evil was not mentioned. I didn't even look at it, but there's like this evil they have to guard at the core of the island, and it was never mentioned. It's not like a monster. I don't know Wonder Woman's story, so maybe you guys know what that is. But it affects the plant life and animal life, when things get really, really rough. But the origin of Wonder Woman is based on prayers and blessings, and I love that. I love that idea. So if you want more of like a mythological divine with several supernatural beings with different qualities, different traits, and different powers, then I think that would be really cool to whether have an origin story with that kind of character, or something close to like Tolkien that's a little bit more of a Christian analog. Now, while this is so cool, one thing that the very different thing between the goddesses and gods, they're not really mentioned besides Zeus and Hermes, who's the messenger of the gods. The goddesses are not all powerful. The gods and goddesses are not all powerful. There's this, I didn't catch it until the very end, and until thinking about it, and actually it's not even mentioned until the end, where Wonder Woman has a showdown. In fact, let me see if I can find. She has a showdown with Ares. Let's see if I can find it. Dang it. It's a big book. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so she she reveals with a lasso of truth to Ares what would happen if he had his way, and it humbles him, even though he's still a wicked god. He says, let's see. Um, okay, from this moment forth, he's been defeated by Wonder Woman, who reveals to him the truth. From this moment forth, man must decide his own destruction, because he sees that his own power will just obliterate everything, so he has no one to worship him. His capacity, man's capacity for bloodshed is great, and this shall keep me strong. But I shall never again take an active role in man's demise. It seems those days are past. So maybe that means that's the picture there. It's really cool. It's good. It's good art. What that means to me, at least as a reader, just getting into this world, is that he was the only god. He was the only deity to take an active role in man's decisions, like manipulating, kind of like, I mean, I guess you can compare it with like the devil and demons and stuff. Whereas the other gods and goddesses, they're kind of like they're very passive. They just watch the human race maybe out of curiosity or seeing what's happening. They're not involved. I mean, you've got Athena and Artemis and a few other goddesses who are active in the Amazons, but the Amazons are also immortal, depending on the power of the gods given to them. Now, if the gods go away, if they go to oblivion, if they're totally defeated by Ares, and Ares he's the dominant force, then they go. Therefore the Amazons get old and age and decay. But as long as the gods are there and they have faith to the gods and goddesses, and there's also this kind of mutual faith to Wonder Woman that Athena has in particular. As long as the goddess Athena and all the other people follow her lead in having faith to the Amazons in particular, and also to Wonder Woman in particular, everything's good. But they're not active. So that was a direct contrast. That's opposite of C.S. Lewis, who is having deep heaven come down upon Earth. So having the heavenly forces of the solar system come down and bring judgment upon Earth, particularly England. Whereas it's Wonder Woman who has total agency. Yes, she has the faith of the goddesses, and she has faith in the goddesses herself. It's a mutual faith thing, but she alone, with the lasso of truth as oh, what's that god's name who made the lasso of truth? Of course, my prof would know, and it's just too big a book to look through it. But he's in there. He's the brother of Ares, and he crafts the lasso of truth. It's her ability to lasso Ares and show him the truth and the error of his ways that makes her win. And I actually like that. I like that particularly with Wonder Woman, who is feminine, who is female, with a supreme male god that she has to best, because it's like, yeah, bring the truth, bring the word of truth. Lasso is also, I think lasso is a very feminine weapon. It's you're corralling the evil to best the evil. And I know she uses a sword in other renditions, but I like the lasso. I like the lasso for a woman. I think that's great. To tame the beast, because femininity traditionally tames the anger and unless they're angry themselves. So it's a completely different relationship with the divine. Where Ransom at the third book, he's not an active agent in the working of the archangels and of God in the space trilogy. Whereas Wonder Woman, she is an active agent. She saves the gods, and that's, for a Christian, that's kind of hard to wrap. It's hard to wrap my head around that. Like, okay, so wait, she prays to the gods, but then they're going to oblivion because Ares is too strong. So there's a little bit of like, okay, I gotta let my Christian tendencies kind of overwhelm that. Well, what's the whole point of prayer? Because I was talking to Prof about that. I was like, wait, what's the whole point of prayer to ask for intercession of the gods if they're taking the ferry down the river Styx to oblivion? So there was that, but it's just show that Wonder Woman having all the virtues of the goddesses uh, um, bestowed to her, can, by her own agency, defeat Ares. And that's what happened. So there's a lot of different ways to include the divine in literature and stories. I still prefer, while I would draw more toward Christian theological analogs, like C.S. Lewis, I prefer, as a storyteller and as a reader myself, that the protagonists still have a very active role. It makes sense theologically speaking, like, oh, okay, heaven is brought upon them, hell is brought upon them, but just as a matter of storytelling, like, just have the protagonist defeat the evil. But I'm still not faulting C.S. Lewis for that wonderful space trilogy. All right, let's get into the chat. That was fun. There's so much. I feel like I'm not even saying I'm saying, but or that even makes sense because I'm getting kind of tired. I feel like there's so much that I left out because it's all super super dense. Prof says the evil they guard comes up in future volumes. Do you have those? That'd be really interesting. And it is actually in the history, because like good comic books, they'll have like stats and history and stuff. So there's Ares, there's Decay. Decay was terrifying. I think she was more terrifying than Ares. I was more terrified of her than Ares. Ares is formidable, but like, let's see if I can find a good picture of Decay. And there's a lot of gruesome imagery in this. I don't think, is it called Demos? The god of terror with his snake beard. I think that would be also hard to. Oh, let's see. I gotta find it. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's super freaky. Look at her. It's like really terrifying. She's got these really long, I didn't see it in this picture because I was just seeing the chaos of the room and stuff, but she's got these really long ears like a goblin, and it's just terrifying. I'm actually really actually, Prof, if you have more Wonder Woman stories, because one villain I'd really like to know more is this lady here, who is she's the cheetah. I think Wonder Woman can have male villains, but I think it's super appropriate for if she's a character like Batman and Superman who has this like rogues gallery. I think most of the villains need to be female. I like that a little bit more. I mean, yeah, she can have male villains. It's fine. I'm not saying female heroes can't have male villains, but if she has a huge collection of villains, it makes sense that she has a lot of villainesses. All right. Yeah, yes, you have the full set. Awesome. Probably will be reading more Wonder Woman this year then. That's cool. Final Fantasy fan says, but ever since the new 52, DC slowly made Wonder Woman have a sword and shield as her primary weapons, and made her not as Wonder Woman, but as a Final Fantasy character. Yeah. Yeah, like she is from the Amazon culture. So and they, I mean, her mother is a warrior, but her mother is it Hippolyta? Is that how you pronounce it? I hope I did. But her mother, while she's a warrior, she wants to present justice, mercy, and virtue. So she's from that line. Whereas I think her mother's sister is she wanted vengeance against Heracles and his men for dominating them into slavery. And she what is her name? Antiope and Antiope. I don't know how to pronounce the Greek name. Sorry, guys. But she, Hippolyta's sister, I I hope I'm saying those names right. So Diana's mother is a warrior, but she executes justice and mercy first. her sister loves the act of killing out of vengeance. So she's very different from that. And she also forsakes the gods and goddesses. So very, very interesting. So all that to say, Final Fantasy, I can see Wonder Woman using a sword. But I think the lasso is the best. Definitely think the lasso is the best weapon for her. All right, so wow, that was a lot. And I felt like I never like even scratched the surface. So I hope I did. But anyway, so just as a capping off of the two stories, this is Wonder Woman where her origin, her history, her ancestral history is based on the bestowing of the goddesses. And all the virtue and all the qualities that she has is based on prayers and intercession and blessing before her birth, before her mother made her out of clay. And the dynamic is much different from like the Christian dynamic in that she prays to the gods and goddesses, but she also brings about the fate of the gods and goddesses. So she saves mankind, she saves the world, but she also in turn saves the gods of Olympus and the goddesses of Olympus. Whereas with C.S. Lewis, it's more divine intervention. So there's action in the journeying through Mars and Venus, and also taking down a demonic man in Paralandra. But with hideous strength, the agency is how you behave, how you view the world, how you view Old England versus New England, which is really Britain. There was some terminology and some mythological things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I know English people of the 1940s would understand, but like I had to actually look it up. Like, okay, what's Logris and what's the whole King Arthur thing between England, the good England, and Britain, the bad England, which is kind of funny actually, because with all the I don't know if you guys are aware, well, some of you guys are in England, but there's a lot of problems in England right now, and it has to do with English. What's it like being English, and what's it like being British? And Lewis kind of shows that in that hideous strength as early, well, not as early, but in the 1940s. What is the true England? What is the true English versus what is Britain? What is international? What is global? What is all these like multicultural things that are bombarding England now? I wonder now that I think about it, I really wonder what C.S. Lewis would think of England now. I think he would probably want to go back to heaven or something. Yeah. So yeah, let's I guess we'll wrap it up there. Oh, Stunning and Brave Megatron, good to see you. Okay, just looked it up. They changed up who crafted the lasso over the years. Sometimes, so that was okay. Hephaestus. I don't know how to pronounce these names. That was him. So that was the brother of Ares, who constructed the lasso, or Aphrodite, and in New 52 is something else. Yeah, we don't talk about that here. The New 52. Yeah, cool. I love DC Comics. I'm having such a like I tell Prof, like that's the thing, is like I'm not a comic book fan or a comic book reader, but every comic book I've read has been an absolute joy. I love the comic book reading experience. I love this book. What would I rate it? I didn't really give it a review. Apart from the whole lack of love interest between Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, I'd give it a solid A minus. It's a very good read. It's very fun. It's very tense. There's some gruesome stuff along the way, but it's good. It's a very good read. I highly recommend it. All right. So I guess we'll leave it at that. I wanted to say before wrapping it up. I can't talk right now. Let's see. What was I gonna say? wanted to present my short story published. There's been a little, and it's not the formatter's fault, but I've had a little bit of a run-in with Fiverr, and it's my fault because I don't know how to work Fiverr, and I think there's been a miscommunication. Totally not the fault of people I've hired. I just didn't know how to work the layout, and I'm sorely confused. So I'm waiting on my final draft for a formatted draft for the ebook, and then once I have that final draft, then I will work on setting that up on Amazon Kindle or Amazon Direct Publishing. I think that's what you call it, or Kindle Direct Publishing, whatever it's called. And I'd like to present my first science fiction body of work for you guys in the coming weeks. Hopefully as soon as this week, depending. So we'll see. But yeah, that's it. I think I'll end it there. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and thanks for joining me here. Oh man, Amy something. Let me see. Oh yeah, well yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, there's so much. There's so much. Dang it. One sec before I go. Amy L says, I'd say Britain has always been multicultural to some extent. Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and are not England. Yeah, well, with C.S. Lewis, there is a difference between being English and being British. And Britain is, England is part of Britain, but a lot of people are ethnically English and culturally British. And he was seeing, I would say C.S. Lewis had a lot of foresight with his works. But it was good stuff. I highly recommend the Space Trilogy. Oh, wait, before I go, someone said, I don't know who said it, but I did see it in the chat that someone had not read any of C.S. Lewis's works. You know what? This might be too simple a recommendation. For those of you who have not read C.S. Lewis, start with his Chronicles of Narnia. They're 7 books, but they're very fast reads because they were written for children. And actually, the Space Trilogy was written to be a fairy tale for grown-ups. That's how he described the Space Trilogy. But Chronicles of Narnia is timeless. It's there's a lot of Christian analog, but it works as a beautiful fantasy series. Wonderful coming of a world, the goings on in the world, and then also the ending of the world. It's great. So that I would recommend. I think Prof was recommending Till We Have Faces, which I think would be the next C.S. Lewis that I would definitely read. Yeah, Till We Have Faces. Yep. Till We Have Faces is my favorite C.S. Lewis novel. So I would love to read that one. I think that would probably be a good one to look into. Oruko says the English, Welsh, and Irish and Scottish engage in mortal combat every 50 years. Mortal combat every 50 years. Yeah. Oh, good, Crystal Ashes. Maybe that was you. Yeah. Chronicles of Narnia. Yeah, it's 7 books, but they're very fast reads. And then if you like space fantasy, well, here's the thing. Wait until I should do a review because there's a lot to expect with the Space Trilogy. It's very dense. It's very dense. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And until I see you next, keep producing, preserving, and promoting that good art you love. And I'll catch you later.